we are talking about Jerusalem in 67. There were 3 brigades that fought here, and we have people who fought with those brigades here. We will start with Colonel Yossi Lengotski. He was reconnaissance company of the 16th Brigade. 16th Brigade was Jerusalem Brigade, the regional brigade that was responsible here daily. And part of that, he did few things in the intelligence corps and other activities. I will not go into all of that. In the book that you have, it has some sketches, short sketches of his activities. In his civil life, he is a geologist that discovers the gas reservoir in the Mediterranean Sea. So nothing related to conquer Jerusalem, right? Yossi,
okay.
Microphone is yours.
As a matter of fact, this is the first time I'm lecturing regarding the Battle of Jerusalem in English. And I want to assure you, in case my Hebrew is much better than my English. Any case, you can put it in your notes. Okay. The meaning of Jerusalem, just about what Jerusalem means to every Israeli, to every Jew, is a lecture which I'm not going into it, okay? But I believe that you are aware that Jerusalem is Jerusalem. There is only one Jerusalem. There is only one Jerusalem. And there is only one Temple Mount. That's it. Okay, we're not going to begin with Josephus Flavius and not with the Maccabites. We're going to begin with the decision of the United Nations of the November 29, 1947, when a decision, the United Nations have decided to establish 2 independent countries in Palestine, a Jewish one, the red or brown color, and Arab one, the yellow one. This was the decision. As a matter of fact, I have to emphasize that Jerusalem was the decision was that Jerusalem is going to be international zone, not Arab and not Jewish, okay? So this is the decision. Next morning, the Arab began with the war. And again, we're not going to speak about the War of Independence in general, but we're just going to say some words about the war in Jerusalem. You can see that the end of the war, about a year, November 1948, the borders were, this is the green line. Whatever is on the left side of the green line is an Israeli territory, and whatever is on the right side was a Jordanian one, not a Palestinian one, a Jordanian one. Okay, let's continue. The Jerusalem, the heaviest battle during the War of Independence was in Jerusalem. 1/3 of the casualties of the War of Independence were in Jerusalem. I don't know if you are aware to the numbers. 1% of the population at that time, which is 6,000 of the 600,000 were killed. It's in today's numbers, it means almost 60 or 70,000. The war in Jerusalem lasted 12 months, of which 3 months Jerusalem was under siege. I am a Jerusalemer. I was born in Jerusalem. I am now in exile in Ramat HaSharon for more than 30 years. During the War of Independence, I was 13, 14, and I was participating during the 3 months of siege as a runner. I don't know if this is the right expression. As a runner, IDF, Haganah, whatever it was. Now, from the 2009, 1586 were soldiers and civilian 423. The Jewish quarter, at the end of the war, the Jewish quarter, which is the closest area to the Western Wall, to the Wailing Wall, to Temple Mountain, was conquered by the Jordanians, which was quite a shock to us. And Jerusalem, the fight over Jerusalem ends in a stalemate. That's it. No winners. historian can discuss what was the real intention of King Abdullah. Did he really, what were his real intentions? Did he really plan to conquer Jerusalem, or was just a play with agreements with the Israelis? Okay, we are not going even to enter it. The bottom line is that it was a stalemate. Okay, just 2 or 3 pictures how Jerusalem was during the 19 years between 48 and 67. This is Mamila Street. Did you pay a visit to Mamila Street?
Not yet.
Okay, so remember, you'll see here a very beautiful promenade. Some of the most luxury shops are here in this street today. This is the King David Tower, Jaffa Gate. You can see how this was the view during 19 years. Another place, Kibbutz Ramat Rachel, which is the southern flank of Jerusalem. This kibbutz changed hands 3 times over the warfare. 3 times. We're not going into the details. And this is the last picture, anti-sniper screen, Mamila Street. As to prevent snipers, which were once in a while, were shooting from the walls of the old city into the new city, screens were built in various places close to the old city. Okay. In 28 of November 1948, Lieutenant Lieutenant Colonel Moshe Dayan, at that time there were no colonels and there were no brigadier generals. There was a lieutenant colonel and then it was a major general. So he was heading the Jerusalem area, met with the Lieutenant Colonel Abdallah Etal, the Jordanian commander of the Jerusalem area, somewhere here and they took a map and drew with Chinograph, you know what's Chinograph? We're using the terminology. Each one marked the boundary of his forces. So this color represents the Israeli area, and this one represents the Jordanian area. You can see that in some places the distance between the lines is hundreds of meters, but in some places it's really touch one. And I want to emphasize, we're looking at that map, okay, the ceasefire demarcation line, or what we call city line, its length is 7 kilometers from north to south, from Ammunition Hill, where we are right now, to Kibbutz Ramat Rachel, to the Bell. And you can see here 2 unique areas. Both of them are the governing territories of Jerusalem. One of them in Mount Scopus. The second one is Government House area. Both of them was declared as demilitarized area. So there is the enclave of Mount Scopus because it was surrounded by Arabs, the soldiers. Distance of Mount Scopus from the city line was around 1,200 meters. And the Government House, who was connected with the Israeli territory, no problems. I would like to show you here something else. All the brown color represent, you can see all around the area, there was a very big asymmetry between the Jordanians and the Israeli forces. The Jordanians were playing it most seriously, most professionally, more than a brigade. It depends what period of time are we talking about, were in fortified, I don't know if I'm translating it from Hebrew, fortified strongholds, which means an area with mines surrounding it, trenches, bunkers, etc. Okay? Some of them, were isolated. Some of them were a combination of a battalion array. And you can see this is the deployment of the Jordanian soldiers over Jerusalem. How many soldiers were protecting Jerusalem? You won't believe me. 60. 10 observation points. You can see this blue color. 10, that's all. A company. And this was not a special company of the Jerusalem area. All the forces of the Israeli Defense Forces were, every unit came for a month to Jerusalem city of line. That's all. And the only exception is Mount Scopus. On Mount Scopus were 120 soldiers pretending to be policemen. You know, both sides knew that we are playing games, they are playing games, you know. Anyhow, 120, and the connection between Mount Scopus and the city was a bi-weekly convoy which was moving every Wednesday morning, every second week, Wednesday morning up to the mountain and came back. That's it. But we were not that irresponsible. The idea was that were emergency forces who were ready in a couple of hours to enter into a battle with something will develop in Jerusalem area. Not only, in a minute we'll talk about it, the Jerusalem brigade, which was not a brigade, it was almost a division. There were 8 battalions, and also there were always armor forces or parachute troopers, which were all over the country, who were ready in a couple of hours to move to Jerusalem area. So this was the situation. Okay, here is the map, another scale. Here you can see this is the green line in Jerusalem, Mount Scopus enclave, government house, and you can see what is here. We call it the corridor. Okay, I will use that expression later on. The corridor to Jerusalem. This is the end result of the battles of the War of Jerusalem. By the way, it's also an opportunity to share with you the following information. Most of the commanding officers at the general headquarters during the Six-Day War were participating in the war in Jerusalem 19 years before with the Palmach. Do you know what's a Palmach? Okay. And their experience with the Jordanians was that they are very good soldiers, very tough. It's not going to be simple. How comes that in the war of the Six-Day War it was totally different? So one of the explanations, again, I'm not going to discuss it, but to mention, some of the battalion commanders and some of the company commanders in the Arab Legion during the 47 war were British. So I think that that's what makes the difference, okay? The reason their experience during the War of Independence was also a very important factor, that let's not begin a fight with the Jordanians. It's not going to be simple. Okay, this was one of the considerations. Okay, Jerusalem security between 48 and 67, the city was split into 2. Mount Scopus government house demilitarized. They were the most essential territories in Jerusalem area. Their height, by the way, above the old city is more than 100 meters. I don't know whether you saw it, but if not, you're going to see tomorrow. With enormous asymmetry, we talked about it already. Jordanian threat surprise. This, you know, if I have now to make a movie, I have no intention, about the Six-Day War, I would say that the title would be To Save Mount Scopus. That was the philosophy or the strategy or the main factor at the beginning of the war. What's going to happen with Mount Scopus? Why? The reason was that during 19 years between the 2 wars, the Israeli Defense Forces was very highly involved in the defense of Mount Scopus. You can't imagine how many tricks and how many techniques and how many bluffs, whatever it is, were done as to assure that if a Jordanian will decide at a certain moment to surprise us, it's only 120 soldiers, it will be a very tough mission to them, okay? And the first thing which happened during the beginning of the war of here at the Jordanian side was, hey, we should save Mount Scopus, okay? Now, the issue, okay, Israel defense policy, what was the philosophy, the main strategic considerations of the Israeli government, the state of Israel? No military action to seize territories, never. Next, Israel and Jordan had a common interest, each one for different reasons, to maintain calm in the city area, although there were some unpleasant events. In order to mitigate injury to the Jewish population, it was decided to take firm defensive steps. It's not Sinai, where you can withdraw, you can flank. Here, the population, you have to be very firm in your defense and to break through the Jordanian territory instantly. That was the philosophy. Okay. The reason, there were four reasons, casus belli, which each one of them was a reason to open a war with the Jordanians. Let's begin the first one. Military treaties being concluded between Jordan and other hostile countries. It took place a week before the war. In a minute we'll talk about. Second, movement of hostile troops into Jordanian territories. The same. Next, the undermining of the stability of the Jordanian royal family. I don't know if you are aware, but King Abdullah I was assassinated in Temple Mount, 1951 or 50, and we almost went into Jordan as a result of it. Another reason was Jordan disruption of the bi-weekly convoy to Mount Scopus enclave. I can tell you, as one who served between 54 to 67, 13 years in the reserves of Jerusalem Brigade, that this issue was a very dominant issue in the IDF, especially with the Jerusalem Brigade, because every 2 weeks preparations took place to assure that if the Jordanians, either the Jordanian army or civilians will try, I don't know, whatever they can do, and we had a very bad experience during the War of Independence, a convoy with physicians and nurses which was moving from Jerusalem to Mount Scopus. 70, 72, 73 were murdered exactly on the way to Mount. So this was a real trauma, and preparation took place. Now, very interesting, and I want to mention it. Some of the main factors or planning to protect the convoy in case of war were the base to the beginning of the Six-Day War here in Jerusalem. Okay. I want to emphasize, and this is something which is related to whatever Uzi will later on will talk to you about. I don't know if you are aware how the battle here in Ammunition Hill is a national, pain. That's it. Until now, people are disputing whether it had to take place this way or the other way. Till now, 50 years ago, people are still fighting about it. So I want to mention regarding this issue only one, and to say the following. Every 2 weeks, the Israeli Air Force was in a standby of, I think, 5 minutes to come and to save the convoy with something will happen to them on the way to Mount Scopus. Okay? So, Ammunition Hill and all the other strongholds here in this area were a known legitimate targets. Everything was planned, everything is in writing, and even now when we're talking about it, it's very painful to think why didn't it happen during the war of the Six-Day War. Okay, next. Here you can see, it's very sad, but this is the truth. No real debriefing took place after the Six-Day War. Would you believe? Because, the general were so proud. Temple Mountain is our hand, so let's move, let's continue. And I can tell you, I think you were told I'm a geologist, but a few years ago I was asked to be responsible to a model which we'll see later on. So I spent almost half a year in the archives, and I read a lot of official documents which gave me a different idea of really what happened. So, if you ask me now, did the IDF really plan, did the IDF really took seriously the possibility of entering into what we call the West Bank and so on? I would tell you, no. No. The documents prove that the only issue which was discussed and which was planned was breakthrough to Mount Scopus. And then, you know, there was some document to say that in case it will develop, maybe we'll conquer the entire area. But mainly it was always restricted to the issue of Mount Scopus. Now I want to show you, okay. The name of the
Operation Order.
Okay. The name of the operation order was Pargol, which means in English whip, W-H-I-P, okay. Mission to conquer North and East Jerusalem in 12 hours, entire West Bank 72 hours. Operation initiated by Israel. We were very smart. We were sure that we are going to initiate it. Okay, next. Method, a combination of, I hope that I translated it properly, circumventing course of action, frontal course of action, secondary course of action, and I will explain it on the map. This is the circumventing course of action to Mount Scopus. This is the frontal course of action. This is Armor Brigade number 10. This is the paratrooper, and this was planned for the Jerusalemite brigade. The intention of this course of action, and this one is to arrive to save the Mount Scopus. That was the whole idea. The idea of the secondary course of action here was to decept that the Jordanians wouldn't know where are we coming from, to confusion and so on, and of course also to block forces, Jordanian forces from the southern part of from Hebron to join the Jordanians in Jerusalem area. H hour, this is a very important one. The H hour in all documents it is emphasized that H hour Air Force will attack especially in the northern part of Jerusalem, the fortified northern part of Jerusalem, ammunition hill and so on, 2 hours before ground forces will move into the eastern city. Now, in case of down option, 4 o'clock in the morning, the Air Force for 2 hours, and then the ground forces at 6 o'clock, or if it's dusk, at 5 o'clock, Air Force for 2 hours, and then the ground forces. This is a very delicate issue in the discussion about the war of... anyhow, things were planned accordingly, and now let's go on. Okay. Milestone before the war, 30th of May, Jordan joined Syrian-Egyptian military pact. Remember, I was mentioning it before, Joint Military Command, permission granted to Iraqi division to enter to Jordan, commitment to take Israel. 1st of June, establishment of an all-parties government. Moshe Dayan was nominated to be the Minister of Defense. 2 Egyptian commander battalions into Jordan, 3rd of June. 4th of June, Iraqi forces crossing. And at that day, the government of Israel said, okay, enough is enough. We're going with it to move ahead with the preemptive war. Okay. Okay. Order of battle with the Jordanians. Let's begin with the Jordanians. There are 7, but one of them is out of Palestine. 6 infantry brigades, but not like us. They were there well prepared to the war. Okay? 6 brigades. 2 armor brigades, the 40th and the 60th. We're not going to talk about this one because this one is related to the battle in Jerusalem. And now, let's talk about the Israeli units. The blue areas you can see, and now this is the 16th Brigade, the Jerusalemite Brigade, which was holding Jerusalem in the corridor. And here are 2 other brigades, the Armor Brigade, the 10th Brigade, and the 55th Brigade, the Paratrooper Brigade. All of them were about hour and a half distant from Jerusalem. Both of them were prepared and were equipped for totally other missions. Totally other missions. The paratroopers were prepared to jump into Sinai. The 10th Brigade to another. Anyhow, the only brigade which really was ready to fight in the Jerusalem area was the Jerusalemite brigade. Okay. Okay. In the evening, 8 o'clock in the evening, before the War of Independence, before the 5th of June, Uzi Nakis, who was the commanding officer of the Central Command, said in a meeting, I didn't translate the whole, but just the highlights. He said, 2 issues I'm worried. What was a main concern is Mount Scopus, which was well prepared, and the government house. Believe it or not, for 19 years I saw in the documents a lot of plans to defend this Beten Raka, soft belly of the government house. There were plans and there were plans and there were plans, and nothing took place. When the war took place, it was totally exposed, no protection whatsoever. And you are wondering how a commanding officer at Central Command is coming with such a note few hours before the war. So what did you do for, I don't know how many years was you in that position? Okay. Okay. This is a map, opening of hostilities. You can see the line, the city line. You can see the 2nd Infantry Jordanian Brigade, the 3rd Jordanian Brigade, the 29th Brigade, and a backup reserved to the Jerusalem front, which is the 27th. So 3 brigades were in Jerusalem in the corridor, and one was, as a reserves to help them. The Jerusalemite brigade, you can see 1 battalion, another battalion, a 3rd battalion, another, okay, there were, and here were the brigade reserves which were used for counterattacks. All the Jerusalem brigade were infantry, all the plans were with them, and the 2 units which really took place in the war were the armor company and my reconnaissance unit, because we were also on half trucks and jeeps. We were out of the city, and we were not involved in different plans which took place with the infantry brigades. Okay? Okay, dawn break 4 o'clock in the morning, dusk 7:11, darkness intensity 27%. The darkness intensity is of highly importance, mainly regarding the difficulties of moving with tanks of the 10th Brigade, because they didn't have any equipment to night seeing equipment, and it was totally dark, 97%. Okay, next. The morning of the war. 8 battalions of the Jerusalemite Brigade are deployed in the city corridor. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mention. What was the Jerusalem Brigade? There were 4 infantry, real infantry brigades, whose commanding officer were of the regular army. All the other were reserves. And there were another 4, which I don't know even how to translate it. Let's call it territorial battalions. For people, old guys, 30 and above. So the idea was that in case of war, the 1st brigade, the 1st infantry brigade, the 4 battalions will be for offensive missions, and the other 4, let's call them territorial battalions, will be to defend the city. Okay. So these 8 battalions were deployed in the city, the corridor. Israeli Air Force 712. King Hussein made his greatest mistake in 9:30 in the morning. He declares war in the radio. What was his second biggest mistake? that they didn't join the Egyptian and the Syrians during the Yom Kippur War. So this was the second biggest mistake. People here are so serious, they're not smiling. Wow. Gideon. Wow, very serious people. Okay. Jordanians opened fire 10 minutes later from Beersheba up to the northern border. And now the standby backup Jerusalem brigade ordered to move into Jerusalem, which means that tanks company, which was not a company but 18 tanks, it was almost 2 companies, and the reconnaissance company, which was not a company but because we were 125 soldiers with 12 officers, we called it a unit and not a company. Cairo radio, very funny, till now nobody explained how did it happen, announced Jordanian occupied the government house. That's it. So people say, what's going on? And Jordanian plans, here are the second mistakes. They attacked targets in the coastal plain. A few minutes later on, the entire Jordanian Air Force was destroyed. The 10th Armored Brigade ordered to move to Mount Scopus 12:30 to save Mount Scopus. Next, Amman radio, like Cairo radio, said Jordanian forces have occupied the government house at Mount Scopus. Nobody understands. A reinforced Jordanian infantry company occupied the government house in the United Nations Oak. Practically speaking, this is the beginning of the 6-day war with the Jordanians in general and in Jerusalem in particular. That's it, the first ground movement. An hour later, a Jordanian platoon was seen to cut the fences of the government house area and to move into agriculture school. Tomorrow you'll see it. Beginning of shooting and so on. And at 14:15, the paratrooper brigade ordered to link up with Mount Scopus, again to save Mount Scopus, generally speaking. It didn't take place, all of the brigades, it was gradually 1 battalion and so on. Uzi will talk about it. And at 3 o'clock, the combined force of the Jerusalem brigade start over a counterattack on government house. I want to emphasize 2 things. First of all, you cannot imagine what a chaos took place when Armored Brigade, which is almost 300 half trucks and tanks, and the paratroopers, all of them moved to Jerusalem simultaneously. Very narrow highways, not like today. Part of the route was observed by the Jordanians. It was shelling, and there were a lot of smoke, and there were many civilian cars on the way. So it was really a very big mishmash. And another point which I would like to emphasize to you, that it took not more than an hour before the Jordanians were seen to enter into Israeli territory till we began with the counterattack. None of those which took place with the counterattack were aware that something of that kind can happen. So it was one very big improvisation. Okay, tomorrow you'll see, we'll move here. Here is a very beautiful promenade today. This is an air photo for 67. You can see here is Allenby Barracks, a British barracks. The road to Government House compound. This is our government compound. This is the main building of the government house. Here is a place, an Arab college. This is agriculture school. Western Gate entering into the government house compound. Antenna Hill, Eastern Gate, and this is a very, almost 2 kilometers long fortified position. It's called the Sausage. So let's give you an idea how it looks like. Okay, the beginning of the movement. Okay, Jordanian occupied government house, 1 o'clock. They came, the company, the reinforced company came from Abu Dis. This was the 4th Brigade, not the one who was deployed along the border. Okay, we were in our unit depot here in the corridor. we moved, you can see the routes into Jerusalem to a place which was well prepared ahead. What I'm showing you is not only the reconnaissance unit, but also the tanks company. At 14:00, we are arriving to Allenby Barracks, and we are waiting to the order to enter into Government House. I'm sure that everyone is aware to the example of shooting a bullet in the wall and later on drawing ground to see how good you were, you know. In many of the war stories, it's exactly the same. People will tell you that they were planning it and I have to teach you an expression in Yiddish. Garnished with garnish, which means nothing with nothing. Not true. We enter into the war. The only maps which the tanks company had, and was 100,000 scale map. I'm sorry. I'm not speaking about the 10th Brigade. I'm speaking about those who participated. What we have, a quarter of a million? Oh, you're so very serious. Uzi is very serious. אתה מאוד רציני.
תמיד. אתה תמיד רציני, אני אומר תמיד.
Okay. So, no maps. Later on, you know, during some of the debriefing took place, the commanding officer of this operation said, we are planning here and there. Okay, he was planning, where are the maps? Where are the sketches? Show me something which will prove that you thought even about it. The ammunition, our ammunition was very limited. And the reconnaissance unit was the elite unit of the Jerusalem Brigade. Okay, unbelievable. One grenade to soldier, 2 grenades, because some of my soldiers were stealing ammunition from another battalion. Seriously, that's it. Okay, let's go. Let's continue. Okay, this is a picture of one of our, the reconnaissance unit. We had 7 half trucks and 11 reconnaissance jeeps, each one of them with either 2 light machine guns or 1 heavy machine guns, a crew of 3 people on each one of the jeeps, and 4 reconnaissance guns jeeps. Okay, so here is one of the half trucks. At the background, you can see there are a lot of smoke. This is the government house. And here we are standing waiting to jump into the government house. Okay, here is the entire battle at the southern flank of Jerusalem. This is the old city. This is the government house. We were entering into Jerusalem somewhere around 10:30 in the morning. We received an order. And I tell you, how did I receive an order? A piece of paper came to me with somebody on a motorcycle to say, move to Allenby Barracks, the Jordanians are in government house. That's it. Similar to the message, to me, a similar message came to the tanks commanding officer. We went into, at 2:10, we were in Allenby Barracks. The commanding officer of the tanks company was a major and I was a major, so we said, who is going to be in charge, you or me? We didn't know what are we expecting to do. We just knew that there are Jordanians in the government house. And then we were told to move to the entrance to the graduate school to meet somebody. Okay, we went there, and there we met the commanding officer of the 161st Battalion, who was in charge to the entire area. His soldiers were deployed along a line of 6 kilometers, a battalion. And he was here by himself with a company. The company was not of a real fighters, but how shall we translate it? You know, we have in the Israeli Defense Forces a special service to academicians, doctors, who received permission from the government of Israel to graduate the studies, and then to be 5 years in the army. So a company of those nice guys who had no experience whatsoever was collected, and they were a fighting company. That's it. At 15, I don't want to go into too many details. Tomorrow we are going to see it. While being here, talking to the commanding officer who was extremely, how shall we say it, excited. It's a compliment, more than excited. And he said, what are you talking about? We don't understand. Show us a map. It's going to end in a catastrophe. And while being there were negotiations between the state of Israel and Jordan and the United Nations and I don't know, King George. I'm kidding. Whoever, everybody were talking, tried to the philosophy of the Israeli Defense Forces was, and I think that it is still, always one big enemy. Try to avoid second efforts. Don't make a mistake. So when the Jordanian began with the fire, messages were transferred to King Hussein. Say, listen, stop with it. We have no intention to fight with you, because our main concern was the Egyptians. Anyhow, no choice. So we were standing there under shelling, and it was very unpleasant for almost an hour, just because we were told not to do it. And I'll tell you now, not a funny, but still a funny story. We attacked government house. We finished with the job. And then the message came to Jerusalem Brigade, don't take government house. So the answer was, government house is already in our hands. Seriously.
At the time, sir, was this terrain open, or was it...
I'm sorry?
Was the terrain open, or was it urban?
Okay, let's put it this way. The company, the reinforced company of the 27th Brigade entered into the compound, but what can a company do in an hour? I mean, here and there, it was a total surprise to them that in an hour we are inside. In a minute you'll see even a picture. I want to show the picture. This is the picture of 3 jeeps, reconnaissance. Here you can see a heavy machine gun, recoilless gun, whatever, which were exactly at the enter to the compound. Okay? Here is written in Arabic, al-Jash, which means the army. Here is our attack on the main government house. Okay, now let's go back. Okay. Between 3 o'clock p.m. till 8 o'clock p.m., the combined force of the Jerusalem Brigade destroyed 3 Jordanian company. Destroy is a fair expression. And here is the story. 2 tanks break through the gate into government house. I, in the first half track with all my unit, was following them. But unfortunately, as I was afraid it's going to happen, I found myself, after 2 minutes, that I'm the only one who's standing facing the main building. All of them continue to the antenna, okay, up to here. That's it. I'm sorry, 2 tanks were close to me, and I was talking to them, asked them to stop firing on the first floor after 2 minutes, as to give me the opportunity to break through to the building. And here, while I'm giving that lecture and tour to many of the Israeli Defense Forces unit, this is a מקרה בוחן, איך אומרים? There is a case of my personal behavior. And in a minute I'll tell you, twice I behave in a very, shall we say, kamikaze way? And question is, was I really out of my mind, or did I do the right thing? And the different opinions, and both of them are legitimate. In a minute, I'll explain to you what am I talking about. While being here facing the government house, all my unit, all the other half trucks were here, all the non-armored jeeps were here, firing on the sausage, and I was facing the main building. So you have to keep a driver of the half truck, the one who is operating the communication equipment, the one who is operating the heavy machine gun. So we have 5 or 6 soldiers. Okay, let's attack the house. I didn't call the whole unit and begin to explain and to say, let's do it this way and this way. Ping! We put a cross explosive, you know what I'm talking about? You're taking 2 pieces of wood. At the end of each one of them, there is a
block.
No?
When it's in charge.
Brick, TNT bricks. Okay, so while approaching the main building, we saw that the main entrance, which is a very impressive one, is closed. What the Jordanian soldiers they were accumulating all furnitures inside as to prevent us from breaking through. So this cross explosive breakthrough into the gates, and a fire began. When I was the first one to enter, it was a little fire. When the 5th soldier, the last one, was a very big fire, and nobody more was able to join us later on. Inside the Jordanians, I don't want to go into details. The story was that it took us not more than 10 minutes to find out that most of the Jordanians really left the house to the backyard. Okay, from here, my soldiers were attacking the sausage. Here was a very big advantage to us because we were attacking from up downwards, and then the composition of the fortification here was not a normal one. Most of the Jordanian strong points were round shape. These were the only one which was really looks like a sausage, and all its all the arrangement for firing was towards the west, and we came from the flank. So it was a very good advantage. And after you can see here at 5:30, we finished here. There were about 25 to 30 killed Jordanian soldiers. We have no one of our soldiers was killed, just few were injured. That's all. From here again, with the tanks ahead, with the half trucks afterwards, we were moving into that Arab village, into the belt. This is the southernmost stronghold in the Jerusalem corridor. A company, by the way, in the south there was also a company, and here was a company. And here, while approaching the edge of that fortified area, 2 tanks came with my half truck. All other were spread all over the village. And again, I don't think that I wasn't even thinking. Now I can say, okay, let's attack. Okay, so partially it was by myself, then 2 or 3 more soldiers joined me, and then another 10. The whole fight here took place by 15 soldiers of ours, took about an hour. 25 Jordanians were killed, 6 of us, and that at 8 o'clock, that was the end of the war in the southern flank of Jerusalem. The end result, I'm sorry, you saw it? Okay, this is the bell. Just this very limited area still exists, all the other are school buildings today. You can see in a very strange way, while preparing the model, I found out that in all the strongholds surrounding Jerusalem, all of them were planned according to a certain engineering problem, I assume from the British Army. 31 bunkers. Everyone, not 29 and not 32, 31 bunkers. And all the other elements are very similar. You can see, I don't want to go into the details. The tanks joined us up to here, and that's it. Okay, few remarks. Okay, the end of the story is that as a result of destroying 3 companies and being here, holding the sausage and the bell, the main highway between southern, let's call it Palestine, Hebron and Bethlehem area, to eastern Jerusalem or to the Jordan Kingdom was disconnected. This was the first strategic achievement. The second one took place at 3 o'clock in the morning by the armor brigade here at that point, and this really was, strategically speaking, the beginning of the end. I want just to say two more things. Both the paratroopers and us were fighting against the Jordanian army. How did it happen that here it was relatively simpler or easier? I have few, I hope, logical explanation. First of all, here is the story. Okay. While fighting here, we were fighting against 3 companies. Each one belonged to another brigade. It's a miracle. You can see here. The sausage was held by soldiers of the 3rd Infantry Brigade. Okay? The company which entered into the government house belonged to the 27th Brigade, and the company which was here at the bell belonged to the 29th Brigade. So you cannot expect much better situation when you are taking companies which have no collections, are unable even to assist one each other. So this is first issue. Second issue, I think maybe is more important, is that we were fighting all along the route with the tanks close to us, a combined force. And my understanding, again, this is another issue, that the paratroopers were not trained, maybe, I don't know, maybe not at all, but basically were not trained with cooperation with the tanks. And I'm taking this opportunity with the following story. After a couple of years after the fight of the Battle of Munition Hill, a discussion took place with one of the Jordanian commanding officers of Jordanian Hill. And he was asked the following question: when did you felt that finito, no way to continue? Because they were fought very bravely. Unbelievable how bravely they were on ammunition. 71 soldiers were killed. It's incredible. So what was his answer? When I saw the dababat in Arabic meant the tanks. When I saw the tanks, so one can say, tanks? Tanks in ammunition? Yes. There were 2 tanks, and the story is, and I'm not going to it, in one sense, 10 Jerusalemite tanks were very close to the ammunition here, were standing after the breakthrough, not knowing what's happening around them. For an hour, they were calling in the, what's happening? Nobody told them what to do. And then the deputy commanding officer of the 66th Brigade Battalion is a geologist like myself. Saw silhouettes of tanks. So he came to them and he said to the commanding officer of the 10 tanks, may I have 2 of them? Would he say 5 of them? He also would get a positive. So 2 tanks were given to him. He took the 2 tanks and he entered into Ammunition Hill. These 2 tanks were unable, and in a minute when we went out, when we'll go out, you'll be able to see, unable, practically speaking, to do anything but noise. Because they were unable to tilt down their whatever they had, and the only thing they can shoot into the moon, that's it. More than that, if a tank is so close to fighting soldiers in the trenches, he's afraid not to shoot his own colleagues. So just the effect, the psychological effect of the tanks was of that importance. Why am I telling this story? Because when I entered into the bell, 2 tanks were very close to me. They were unable to shoot. They didn't shoot, but their presence was of that impact that I think that was one of the reasons for the results. There was another battle in Abu Tor. It's a suburb of Jerusalem, where the battalion commander of 163rd Battalion was killed and 18 of his soldiers. But unfortunately, I don't know what has happened. The map is not here, so maybe tomorrow while being in the field. Okay, question, please.
So I have a question about where you put yourself in the battle. So from what we've understood from some of the history, and even up at Masada, the Roman commander, he put himself in a position where he could best command.
Where he what?
Where he could best command. But then when we were on the Golan, a lot of the tank commanders said the best place to command, well, they commanded from the front. They had to be fighting. In this environment, where did you choose to command from and why?
Okay. Tenth of time during the last 19 years while talking about this subject, my answer is very simple. When I was in a squad commander course to get my corporal, one of the lessons which were taught to me was the commander of every unit, his position during every kind of war, of battle, is in a place where he can influence the success of the mission. That's it. That's the answer. There is no other answer. Because, you know, sometimes I wonder, I had 120 soldiers, 11 officers. So why didn't I call them, explain to them? Because I felt that instinctively, it's not a matter of logic thinking, that would I not attack the main building? It is a mistake. And I am here, I'll do it. The same with the bell. Most of my soldiers were spread all over the village. It took another 30 minutes till they reorganized and joined me. But I felt that it would be a mistake not to do it. So for a few minutes I was by myself. And then, another 5 and so on. I can tell you from whatever I was studying regarding this fight, that the war was won mainly by company commanders and battalion commanders who were decisive, brave, and focused on the mission. Because the war was not planned. This is not the war. We didn't, it was a lot of improvisations. But the role of the commanders at that level, company, battalion commanders, their behavior in various places at various times was the reason for the aggressiveness. I think that this is the right word. The fact that most of the company and the battalion were aggressive. That's the key for success.
Sir, if I could follow.
Well, again, to Gideon, I want to say, at the end of each kind of my lectures to company leaders and battalion leaders, I have 10 recommendations, but let's do it at the end. And one of them, maybe the last one, be aggressive. Don't be stupid, but be aggressive. The more aggressive you will be, the greater are the chances that you'll succeed in your mission. Thank you very much.
Sir, to follow up on that, I was interested earlier. I understood you correctly. The units involved in this operation were not aware of any plan ahead of time. And so they didn't have objectives that they were training to seize. So what did you do during training to maintain that spirit of initiative and aggressiveness and offensive? So when you got a mission, you actually, how did you avoid falling into a defensive mindset when you didn't know what you were supposed to do?
It's a good question. I think that my main answer is I have that various answers to your question, but the main it's a matter of your nature, the way you was educated from your childhood. I think it's or maybe it's also in the DNA. It's a combination of being aggressive or not aggressive, and of course training and so on. What can I say? And I can tell you that from my studies for that model, I found out that It was not Yossi, it's not me. It was very typical to many others. It was not an exception. Okay.
Yossi, thank you very, very much.
You're most welcome.
You will be with us.
Okay.